All right, testing here. Thank you guys for coming back. Another episode of the High School Podcast. This week we've got no guest, just me, myself, and I. So I'm holding it down here. Got a special Thanksgiving edition of the podcast. Want to talk about some things I'm grateful for. Grateful for you for tuning in, and yeah, just want to share a few stories and just share what I'm grateful for. I think when you hear someone talk about what they're grateful for, you can really learn a lot about them, and so that's the reason for this episode here. I want you guys to just understand a little bit about my background and yeah, so we'll dive right into it. First thing I'm really grateful for is my wife. She's incredible. The support she gives me and being her husband is my proudest accomplishment and this podcast would not happen without her, and nor would any of the success that comes my way. She is getting her wisdom teeth out the day before Thanksgiving, so she's going to be sidelined on Thanksgiving. So y'all make sure to eat a little extra for her. A quick abbreviated version of how Sydney and I, that's my wife's name, Sydney and I met was it was my junior year, and it was 2020, a crazy year for the world and a different experience as a college basketball player because we were getting tested for COVID every other day. I mean, like clockwork, we were getting tested. And I surprisingly never tested positive for COVID. But almost my whole team at Utah Valley did at some point. And when they would, sometimes we would get shut down and other times they would have us wear devices during practice to track and see who we were closest to see if it counted as being exposed or not. And also, if you lived with someone on the team and they got it, you were most likely going to be shut down and have to sit out for whatever it was, 7 to 10 days to make sure you don't show symptoms and all that. Well, we had a big crosstown rivalry coming up against BYU, and sure enough, my roommate at the time, Evan Cole, test positive. A side note here is that Evan Cole has been one of my closest friends, if not my closest friend, since high school. We played AU together, had become great friends. And so back to the story, this was a game, the BYU UVU game was a game I was really looking forward to as I had started my college career over at BYU and had since transferred to UVU. So Evan, myself, and Tim Fuller, who also tested positive, had to sit out. So we watched the game from our couch, and UVU ends up losing the game, and we don't think much of it after that. I mean, it was an early season loss, whatever. Well, little did I know that on the other side of the country, back east, a girl formerly known as Sydney Lima was getting picked up from the Charleston airport by her dad. So Sid's parents, big BYU fans. Sid was a Cougarette at BYU. So Sid's dad was watching the BYU UVU game, and they kept talking about a Colby Leifson who had transferred from BYU to UVU, who unfortunately could not participate in the game. And Sid had just gotten out of a bad relationship and didn't want anything to do with guys, but her dad kept asking if she had heard of me or if she knew me, because I mean it's a small world out there in Orem and Provo, Utah. They're one exit away, 10 minutes, and Sid's phone was listening to this conversation as our phones typically do, and the next day, my not so robust Instagram profile came up as suggested for her to follow. And she saw just enough to spark her interest. And so she liked some pictures, and those were the greatest like notifications I'd ever received. Her bio on Instagram said Charleston, South Carolina, and that's where she's from. She's from Somerville, just outside of Charleston. And I immediately DM'd her and told her how Charleston was my favorite city ever. And in high school, I was recruited a little bit by College of Charleston. And so I went up there for about 24 hours. And that was the only time I had been there. I met their coaching staff, toured the facilities. And so I exaggerated a bit by saying that Charleston was my favorite city. And so we met through Instagram. We hit it off and started going on dates. And a year and a half later, May of 2022, we got married. And it all started because of basketball. And it all started because the announcers were talking a lot because I sat out. Now, had I not sat out, maybe I don't play much. I don't know, but I sat out. So they kept bringing up how I could not participate in that game. And so it's funny how things work out. You know, in that moment, I was so upset that I wasn't able to play in that big rivalry game. But sure enough, it ended up working out for me. And so that story kind of segues into the next thing that I'm grateful for, which is basketball. I mean, basketball has been a huge part of my life. It's been a staple for as long as I can remember. And I grew up absolutely obsessed with all sports, not just basketball. Played some baseball, obviously a lot of basketball. I played some tennis. And ever since I was little, I mean, I've followed ESPN like my life depended on it. I mean, I'd wake up, watch Sports Center. I mean, eat some cereal. That was my routine as a kid, was just I was watching sports. And I was always playing sports as well, obviously. So late in middle school, I decided to focus on basketball, and I stopped playing the other sports, even though I was not the best at basketball. I wasn't super athletic or anything. Um, but I just was passionate about it. I loved it. And so after I would make all the teams I tried out for, and I ended up watching a lot of the games from the bench, more than I was playing or involved in crunch minutes or anything. So after my eighth grade season, I decided I definitely wanted to play in college. It was something I was committed to, something I was all in for, and that's kind of how I've been my whole life. Is when I commit to things, I fully commit to them, and I prioritize them, and almost become obsessed with them. And so that's what I did, and I dedicated myself, and fortunately basketball worked out for me. I was able to play at a couple of really good schools, able to meet some incredible people, some incredible experiences, and I won't dive too much into my playing days, but I also am grateful for the special moments that basketball has allowed me, and just some memories and some good that I was able to bring through basketball. And so another story is from this time, my junior year of high school, is is centered around the number 34. The number 34 holds a very special place in my heart. My senior year, one of my youngest brother Everett, his one of his best friends at the time was tragically killed in a car accident. His name was Drew, and a little bit about Drew. I mean, his personality was just larger than life. I mean, just a great kid, always smiling, always laughing, and he loved basketball. And he was like me. He was just jacking in games. I mean, he was getting up shots. And his mom reposted an old story recently on Facebook, where his dad was coaching him and had to tell him to quit shooting in one of the games, which is awesome. And I had some of those conversations whenever my dad was coaching me when I was little, and so I I uh, I share that passion with Drew of just shooting the basketball. And he was a really special kid. He was always over at our house, and whenever he played, he always wore number 34. And after shortly after he passed, I wanted to pay homage to him in some way, and so I texted my high school coach the night before our next game, and I let him know. I said, "Hey, coach, I'm going to try to score 34 tonight in honor of Drew." And that game, Drew also was a huge Clemson fan. I mean, just loved Clemson. And so we had these little, almost like bracelets, but we wrapped them around our shoelaces, the whole team, and we even wore shooting shirts that had 34 on the back in honor of Drew. And so I told my coach, I said, "Hey, I'm going to try to score 34 tomorrow." And sure enough, that next night, I come out hot and I'm making shots. And as they're leaving my hand, I normally know when a shot's going in, and these shots really didn't feel great. But I mean, everything I was putting up was going in, and so I end up hitting 10 threes and a couple easy twos, and I've got 34. And I tell coach, I said, hey, I want to come out. I've got 34, and so I get subbed out, and it was just a special moment for me, as I was able to just shed some light in a difficult situation, a different moment for that family. And basketball's provided me, I mean, countless moments, but that was by far the most special moment of my career. and something I'll cherish forever. My faith is something I'm also extremely grateful for. I firmly believe that faith and confidence go hand in hand, and being surrounded by so many great examples and faithful individuals has allowed my confidence to grow, and it's helped me get through any challenges and times when I doubt myself. And so faith is something extremely important to me. And some of you may know that I spent 2 years as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 2 years as a missionary in Brazil, and I cherish those memories and lessons learned during my time there that helped me build my faith. And my family is another thing I'm really grateful for. I've got great parents and great siblings that have always been supportive, and we're a tight knit group. I've got 3 siblings. I've got 2 younger brothers and an older sister, and having siblings has just been incredible. We keep each other in check, and we're not that far apart in age. My sister is 18 months older than me, and then there's about 2 years between me and Easton, who's one of my younger brothers. He's the other middle sibling, and then my youngest brother Everett is another 2 years, and yeah, love my siblings and super grateful for them. And every holiday season is great. We get to spend some time together and reflect about all these different things that we're grateful for. And yeah, I'm grateful for my employment as well. I work for a company that markets insurance products, life insurance, health insurance, and I'm grateful to be employed, and there's a great culture that we have, and it's allowed Sydney and I to go to some cool places. And yeah, so I mean there's just countless things that I'm grateful for. And during this podcast, I also want to talk about just the podcast moving forward. I the point of this podcast is just to I've met some incredible people along the way through my journey of life, and especially through basketball. And I want to make sure that other people have a chance to get to know these individuals and learn about them and hear their stories. And sports just have a special way of providing us life lessons in a competitive environment. And just you can learn a lot from the team building, the camaraderie, and the different aspects that come along with team sports. And so that's the motive behind the podcast. And also it's just something I've wanted to do for a long time. I love speaking, and also just documenting different stories. I think it's super important, and it's easier than it's ever been to document stories. I mean, Apple does a great job of integrating our notes, our text, our calls. I mean, everything's on our phone. And so I wanted to be able to document all of these different stories and great conversations that I'm privileged to have with so many different individuals. And I appreciate all of the feedback about the podcast so far. I know this is only the third episode, but a lot of my close friends have reached out and given some feedback about what they want to see, who they want to see on the podcast. And so please feel free to leave any comments or any suggestions that you have and what this podcast will look like moving forward. Again, like I mentioned, we're going to have some great guests, and I really want to provide a platform for some current players that are doing great things and just show you guys how good of people these athletes are off the floor. I mean, you see them play, and during some competitive moments, maybe you're quick to judge, or you think that these people are a certain way because they're competitive and they get a little feisty during some games. But there's a lot of incredible people in the world of sports. And then um Eric Mika, who I played with and is a good friend of mine, has a great podcast called the Now for Later podcast. And seeing him grow that, start that was a great inspiration for me to finally just dive into this. And so I'm learning a lot on the fly. So I appreciate the patience. And yeah, I hope everyone's just having a great Thanksgiving week. I hope that the holidays everyone's able to spend some time with family, loved ones, and enjoy some great sports. I know the NBA in-season tournament is in full swing. I was able to go to the Hawks game last night. They dropped a close one to the Sixers. Sixers pulled away in the third and fourth. Um, I've been following college basketball more. I mean, when you first get out of college sports, it's a weird relationship. I mean, it was tough for me to be on this side of things initially, and it's still not easy because I still have the itch to play and just to be around that the team aspect of sports. And so this is the first year where it's been kind of refreshing. I'm able to more just enjoy the games as far and instead of critiquing or I don't know, just being super jealous of the guys out there playing. And so it's been cool. And as I get further removed, I know less and less of the players, and so there's less emotional involvement in a lot of the games. And so it's been cool. I'm grateful that I was able to play at that level and that now I'm able to appreciate the game more. And yeah, I'm a big basketball guy. Um, NFL, I have not followed as much. I played fantasy in high school, but during college was not able to keep up with NFL much. And so I'm getting back into following the NFL. It's a good year because I mean it kind of looks pretty wide open for the NFL. And big Braves fan. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the MLB, but I'm a big Braves fan. And so love the Braves. Obviously had a great regular season. Before wrapping up this episode, I just want to touch on some things happening around the NBA. Just want to do three pleasant surprises early on here in the NBA season, and the three biggest disappointments for me early on this season. And I think the biggest surprise for me so far has been Tyrese Maxey's leap. I mean, he's made a huge leap from last year playing with James Harden. James Harden demands the ball, needs the ball to be successful, and obviously they were paying him a hefty amount, and so he's going to get the ball a lot. And playing with Joel Embiid and Harden and Embiid had the 1-2 punch, obviously, in a ton of pick and roll situations. And so now Maxey goes into that role of being the primary ball handler and being the guy that takes important shots down the stretch. I mean, Tyrese Maxey is top 10 in points and assists so far early this season. I had a chance to watch the Sixers here in Atlanta last night, which is Friday night, the 17th. For when this comes out, it'll be a little delayed. But I mean, Tyrese Maxey does not look like a 23-year-old out on the floor. I mean, showing a lot of poise, making very difficult shots. I mean, the balance that he plays with, he's able to hit difficult step backs. I mean, he's almost mastered the floater, which is the toughest shot in basketball. I mean, a lot of coaches do not encourage floaters to be shot, and he's hitting one-legged, two-legged floaters over 7-footers. I mean, he is hitting some difficult shots. He's making the right plays. I mean, he's even rebounding the basketball some, which has been very impressive. The Sixers have definitely been a pleasant surprise early this year, and especially Tyrese Maxey. Hats off to him. Hats off to him. I mean, 23 years old. He's got a very bright future. And I've seen some statistics where he's like top 5 in MVP um power rankings, whatever they call him, MVP race. He's top 5 right now. Another pleasant surprise has been the Rockets. I mean, uh Ime came in there, new coach, and Houston's culture is something that gets made fun of a lot throughout the NBA. I mean, they've got young guys that get into trouble and get into stuff they're not supposed to do. and they've got some guys that have made leaps this year and they're winning games. They recently dropped one last night to the Clippers. We'll get more on the Clippers later, but just hats off to the Rockets. I mean, they got some young guys and recent draft picks over the past 2-3 years. I think adding Dylan Brooks to that mix, adding Fred VanVleet to that mix, a couple of guys that have experience, that are defensive minded players, and that that are culture cornerstones. I think that was important for them. I mean, they've got five guys averaging 12 or more points. Jabari Smith has made a little leap, averaging 12 and 7. You got Jalen Green, who's playing much better than he's played in the past. And again, just I think Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks have that impact on the team. I think they're able to build a culture. They're respected by the guys, and they they're not guys that just talk about doing stuff. I mean, they're doing it. They're being examples to the younger players, and they've got some good role players. I mean, I think Amin Thompson is going to be a very good player along with his brother in the league. I mean, prototypical NBA wing, freak athletes. I think the Rockets are going to make some noise. Now, do they continue this all year? I don't know. I mean, they're currently 6-4 at the time of this recording. Haven't won a game on the road. I mean, that's kind of to be expected from a young team to struggle on the road and be good at home. So it'll be interesting to see, but they're definitely a pleasant surprise to the start of this season. Another pleasant surprise for me has been the in-season tournament and the success and the buzz that is generated. I mean, the NBA is a enormous brand, and they started the play-in game a few years back, and that's been a big success. I love the playing game. I mean, it just adds value to games that weren't there before. And the in-season tournament is something that was taken from the Premier League. I mean, Adam Silver even said that that's where they got it from, the Premier League. They play the FA Cup, which is an in-season tournament, but it has meaning over there. And I think as an American culture, sometimes new things are just, we don't respond to change super well. And so to see the players buying into the in-season tournament, I saw an interview with Damian Lillard earlier this week where he's talking about how the grand prize of $500,000. Now, for some of these guys, I mean, they're making 20, 30 million a year. It might not be that big of a deal, but they know that there are players that have two-way contracts that might be making 100 grand, 125,000, and they're fringe NBA guys. I mean, they could be out of the league next year, and $500,000 could definitely change someone's life. And so it's cool to see those superstars buy into these games. And the Suns Jazz was a great game last night. KD hit a very tough shot down the stretch. Devin Booker career high in assists. I believe he had 15. And so seeing these guys that sometimes coast early on in the season, it's been cool to see them buy into these games. The Suns would have lost had they been eliminated last night, but now they are still in contention, have potential to advance to the next round from their pool. Now let's get to the three biggest disappointments so far. Number one has been the Clippers. I mean, the Clippers, it's been difficult to watch because there's so much talent, so much potential on the floor. And just to see them struggle has been sad. Now it's early. It's easy to overreact, and you got that much firepower, that many superstars that demand the ball and that historically have had extremely high usage rates in Russ, Harden, Paul George, Kawhi. But I'm a big Paul George guy. I'm a big Kawhi fan, and Harden. I mean, I think the whole league kind of has a negative sentiment towards Harden just because he keeps bouncing around and forcing himself out, and so I'm not as big on Harden as I was, but I mean he can play, and same with Russ. I mean Russ. He just volunteered to come off the bench. I mean, Russ seems like an incredible person. I know he's always giving back to the community. So I root for Russ. And so I'm rooting for the Clippers to have success. I'm not a Clippers fan, but this team has so much potential. And Ty Lue's got a tall task. I mean, you got that many cooks in the kitchen. It'll be interesting to see how they distribute the love and find a way to make it work, because that's a team that's got to be in the playoffs. I mean, it's easy to overreact to their slow start, but they got to get to the playoffs. And I really just hope that Kawhi, Paul George, can stay healthy, along with Harden as well. He's had a little um, injury history as of late. Another big disappointment has been the Suns for me. I mean, that's mainly because of Bradley Beal's injuries, and KD and Devin Booker are having to play a little differently than they would with Bradley Beal there. He's only played in 3 games so far, and it's a disappointment for me because I want to see him play, and that was something I was really looking forward to paying more attention to this season, was just the Suns and how their big three would mesh. And so it'll be interesting to see how once Bradley Beal gets healthy, as he's coming back and getting integrated back into that offense. Frank Vogel, like Ty Lue, I mean, he's got a tall task. Their bench is not super deep. I mean, when you got 3 contracts that are um that big, it's tough to go and get pieces to build around. So they've got some veterans. They got Eric Gordon. Josh Okogie is There's great value in Josh Okogie. I mean, a great defender. He'll do the dirty work, and he's not a guy that needs the ball to affect the game. And so I think he's a good piece for them. My last disappointment has been just some of the ejections have just been so soft, and some of the technicals have just been. I mean, you got to just let them play. Got to respect. I mean, if somebody's dunking on somebody, let them at least glance at the guy. I mean, I know the NFL has the nickname "No Fun League," and the NBA is kind of getting like that. I get they don't want a brawl to happen, which makes sense. And and Draymond Green putting Rudy Gobert in a chokehold, that was an insane situation. But I think the refs gotta let the fans have some more enjoyment before they cut it off. I get where they're coming from, but the officiating, I mean, they keep changing the rules year to year, and it's an entertainment league. That's what it is. So let a little celebration go. I mean, let a little chirp in here and there. I think the refs could maintain control of the game without having to give a technical so quickly. I could be wrong there, but that's what I think. And yeah, so I'm big NBA guy, and it's a long season. Some of these overreactions will look silly in a few months when maybe the Clippers win 10, 12 straight and go on to have a great run in the playoffs. And again, the other disappointments, I mean, the Suns is injuries. I mean, I'm mad that he's hurt. I mean, that's out of his control, kind of silly. And then the officiating is something that I get. The refs, they got to implement new rules, and it'll take some time adjusting, and some refs do a better job of having a feel for the game as opposed to um the letter of the law, whatever you want to say about the referees. But back to the surprises. I mean, Tyrese Maxey's leap has been fun to watch. I mean, I'm a big Tyrese Maxey guy, and I don't love Embiid just because I think he falls too much. He's super talented, obviously, and he's expanding his game. I respect it, but seeing him in person last night, I mean, there were a couple flops that are just terrible. The Rockets been super fun. Young teams just have an energy about them. It's like they know there's no expectations, and you can see that when you watch them play. That they're just kind of playing free, and I hope they keep doing that all year. Maybe have a chance to get into the playoffs. I mean, that would be a huge success in year one of a new coaching staff to get into the playoffs with the Rockets team that was bad last year, very bad. In season tournament, um, I I heard a lot of stuff on Twitter and other places criticizing the in-season tournament, like, oh, why are they trying to do this? Oh, it's so early in the season. Oh, it doesn't make any sense. But I think it's fun. I mean, they count as regular season games. They're going to play games. Now the games just matter. There's higher stakes, and it's fun. It's given meaning to a point of the season that typically does not mean much to these NBA teams. And so it's been cool. I'm a big fan. And so Yeah, that's all for the NBA talk. I'll be doing more of these as the season goes on, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the in season tournament plays out. And if you don't understand the in season tournament, Steph had a great post game interview where he said if you don't understand it, it's because you don't want to understand it. I mean, go Google it. It's very simple to understand. If you want to understand it, it's a quick Google search and maybe a minute of reading. So there's 6 groups, 5 teams in each group. They will play pool games against each other in their group. A team with the best record from each group advances to the knockout round, and 2 wildcard teams, one from each conference, will advance to the knockout round. 8 teams will play in a single game elimination tournament. Quarterfinals will be hosted by the team with the better record. Semifinals and the finals will be played in Las Vegas. The money incentives for the in-season tournament: players on a team that loses in the quarterfinals, $50,000. Players on a team that loses in the semifinals, $100,000. Players on a team that loses in the championship, $200,000. Players on a team that wins the championships, $500,000. So a lot of money on the line here for this in-season tournament, and I'm excited to see it once it gets to the knockout round. And just want to thank you all for tuning in today. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week and a good Thanksgiving holiday. And yeah, thanks again for the support, and I'll see y'all next week.